Hello everyone, welcome to the Crypto Intel channel. Today we will conduct a technical analysis of the Kaspa coin and cover important events planned for 2026. Before we start the video, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and click the bell icon so you can always stay up to date on what's happening in the market. It takes you literally a second, but for me it's motivation to improve the quality and level of the videos on the channel. We have a lot to discuss, so let's get started right away. Right now, Kaspa looks like one of those projects the market may seriously regret overlooking, and the longer the price stays trapped in this boring sideways range, the stronger the feeling becomes that most participants still don't fully understand how close the network is to a potentially game-changing event. What's fascinating is that while the majority of the crypto market remains obsessed with short-term Bitcoin moves, a powerful fundamental story continues to develop around Kaspa. And if we're being realistic, the market is still valuing Kaspa mostly as a high-speed payment coin. But in the coming weeks, the network could gain functionality that pushes it into an entirely different category of blockchain projects. That's why more and more long-term investors are paying attention. As of June 14, 2026, the biggest catalyst for Kaspa remains the highly anticipated Takata upgrade. This isn't just another routine update, this is arguably the most important upgrade in the project's history. Once activated, the network will introduce programmability through Silverscript, support for KRC20 native tokens, infrastructure for DeFi applications, and compatibility with zero-knowledge technologies. In other words, Kaspa would no longer be viewed simply as a fast payment network. It would become a fully programmable Layer 1 blockchain, and that's a huge difference. What's even more interesting is that the market still hasn't shown the kind of excitement that usually appears before upgrades of this magnitude. Crypto history tends to follow a familiar pattern. First, the technology arrives, then developers start building, then applications begin launching, and only after that does the larger capital flow in. That's exactly why many investors are watching the Takata rollout so closely right now. The final test phases have already been completed successfully, and the network has passed its latest rehearsals ahead of activation. For supporters of the project, that's one of the most important developments of the entire year. Now let's move over to the technical picture. At the moment, Kaspa continues holding the critical support area around $0.03. This remains the primary battleground between bulls and bears. Despite broader market pressure and Kaspa's correlation with Bitcoin, sellers have not been able to force a decisive breakdown. Instead, price continues consolidating while quietly building what could become the foundation for a larger move later on. And honestly, this is where many traders lose patience. The chart looks boring, volume cools off, social media attention fades, people move on to the next shiny narrative. But historically, these are often the exact conditions where major accumulation takes place. And major accumulation phases are usually recognized only after they're already over. RSI on the daily time frame remains in neutral territory near the 40 level. That's nowhere close to overbought conditions and suggests the market still has plenty of room to run if strong buying momentum returns. MACD is also beginning to show signs of stabilization after months of bearish pressure. Downside momentum continues weakening, and the overall structure increasingly resembles the type of setup that often appears near long-term bottoms. Another factor that deserves attention is Kaspa's supply dynamics. More than 95% of the total supply is already in circulation. That means future inflation pressure from newly issued coins is becoming less and less significant. For long-term investors, that's one of the strongest parts of the investment thesis. As the market matures, the available supply becomes increasingly limited while demand drivers continue expanding. And that's usually a very attractive combination. The ecosystem itself is also continuing to evolve. Earlier this month, the team released additional details surrounding the launch of Viso Market. Development of the KRC20 ecosystem continues moving forward, and the DeFi landscape inside Kaspa is beginning to take shape. We're already seeing the emergence of lending protocols, financial infrastructure, and early-stage applications that could eventually attract a larger user base. That's important because ecosystems create utility, and utility is what ultimately drives long-term value. Looking at the chart, the key objective for bulls remains reclaiming the 0.035 to 0.036 zone. This area currently represents the most significant nearby resistance. A successful breakout above that level could dramatically shift market sentiment and bring speculative capital back into the asset. Once that happens, the next major target sits in the 0.04 to 0.05 region. But honestly, many investors aren't focused on those short-term levels anymore. They're focused on what happens after Takata, because the real question isn't whether Kaspa can move a few cents higher. The real question is how the market will value the project once it begins operating as a fully programmable Layer 1 ecosystem. If Takata launches successfully and developers start taking advantage of the new capabilities, the market may eventually stop comparing Kaspa to payment-focused networks and start comparing it to entirely different categories of blockchain projects. And that's where the upside narrative becomes much more interesting. To wrap things up, as of June 14, 2026, Kaspa is sitting at one of the most important moments in its recent history. Price remains near long-term support. Market skepticism is still elevated, but the fundamental picture continues strengthening almost every week. Takata is approaching, the ecosystem is expanding, supply inflation is becoming less relevant, and the technical structure is gradually stabilizing. If developers begin actively building on the new infrastructure after launch, Kaspa could easily become one of those projects that people look back on months later and say, the signs were right there the whole time. Most people just noticed them too late. Your plans, hopes, and expectations are for it. The best and most engaging comment will be featured in the next video. Just a reminder, friends, informational and news videos are posted on the channel every day, so you won't get bored here. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you're always up to date on all the latest news. And if you liked this video, please support me with a like. Your like is my motivation. Thanks to everyone for watching, and see you next time.